If you're someone who wants to grow as a leader, communicate with more clarity, and make a real impact on the people around you, this episode is for you.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion, my words got power, my thoughts have action, motivation, stay gracious, that's greatness, be audacious, motivation, be audacious, innovation, be audacious, inspiration, be bold, motivation, be audacious.
Because as a leader, what normally knocks you off is what blindsides you.
Gotcha.
So leaders have to be thinking ahead. What are some of the pitfalls that are out there? You have to go back to your framework. You have to look at what is your why? Why are we doing this? And what are we learning from this? Why did this happen? The why solves a lot of problems. I always tell leaders there's always a way out. When I hear the word there is no way out, that's the surrender mentality. There's always a way out. We just have to make sure we're thinking through it.
Because what if great leadership really isn't about position at all, but about trust, humility, and the ability to bring people with you? This podcast is all about helping you unlock your inner greatness and live your best audacious life. Today's guest is Amos Balango. He's a keynote speaker, communication coach, and leadership expert whose work helps leaders communicate in ways that move people to action. He's passionate about helping people lead well by building trust, staying teachable, and communicating with purpose. What really stood out to me in this conversation was Amos's ability, or rather his reminder, that leadership is not about titles. It's about the value add and the trust you build. So now that we've got you all set, let's get into our conversation with Amos. Enjoy. Hey, Amos, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you for taking the time to be here, my friend.
Oddly, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I oftentimes say it's great to be able to engage in conversation with individuals that can potentially help others kind of live their best audacious life. And that's really what we encourage and promote here. So it's I kind of think it's a blessing, right? And it's a really cool thing to be able to do. And so thank you for doing this. Now, an analogy that we oftentimes use to sort of frame our conversations really much is about the fact that life is like a pathway, right? So we're all on this individual path and we're going through our journey, and there could be obstacles, there could be challenges, it could be pitfalls, but it's up to us to sort of incumbent on us to sort of move through whatever is in front of us to kind of get to the other side, because that's where our individual greatness lies, right? And so it can be hard because maybe on your path you got something that's cool that I may want, but and that's kind of where the similarities kill us, right? Because we look at what other people have and not kind of what's on our own. And we really want to encourage, and I'll use another E word, we want to empower individuals to move with purpose and courage, sure, and have that clarity each step they go, which is really in line with kind of the work that you do and the motivation work that you do to inspire people and to take action in their own lives with clarity and purpose. And so maybe, Amos, as a starting point, I can get you to introduce yourself to our audience, talk about the work that you do and what's got you to the point that you're at now.
All right. Thanks, Arlie. My name is Amos Balango. I'm a keynote speaker and communication coach. And what I do is really help leaders and others be able to effectively communicate their messages so that people can take action. Because an important part of leadership is really your ability to be able to action your ideas and put them into practice. And really the missing piece here is always communication. So I manufacture leaders who can effectively communicate.
And therein lies the challenge, because I think sometimes people overlook the importance of communication, and oftentimes effective communication is the difference maker between having success and not. Does it ever surprise you kind of as you move through? Because we're talking about people. I'm imagining you're talking about people who are senior, reach senior levels and high levels, but they still struggle with communication. Does it ever surprise you that they've gotten this far and still struggle in this area?
Not really, because I believe that we've been living in an age of positional leadership, which is um, I'm in position, you do what I tell you to do, and that's how this has been for a long time. However, there is a shift now, which is going towards influential leadership, which really is, I have to believe in what you're saying. I need to know where you're taking us. I need to know where you're going so that I can jump on board. And that switch and that shift has led to leaders, and not just leaders, but anybody being able to use communication as a tool to influence others towards action.
What do you think is contributing to that shift, Amos?
Well, I think the when we look around, the world is shifting. The people are changing the way they think. We've got generational shifts in the workplace and in life, and the jump and I ask how high kind of way of doing things is a thing of the past. Uh, you know, People want to know why. Why are we doing this, and how are we getting there? Can I trust my leader to get me to that point? So the shift is just, people are changing, people are growing, people are learning. We have, access to the internet, which has
Yeah.
changed the playing field as well. So lots of contributing factors, oddly.
And I definitely agree with you. I think when you even look, I even think this generally when you talk about the information age that we are in, well, the digital age, right? But in terms of information is readily available for us, and if you want to study or learn how to do something, it's literally at your fingertips, literally. Like if you, anything you want, right? Like I know, it's an incredible time to be alive, quite frankly. Like it's like when you think about it in that sense, and I and
Uh,
and I and I think now in many cases the individuals that leaders are leading oftentimes have more resources, are smarter than, or know just as much as leaders. And so that command and control, once you have information, we all say knowledge is power, right? So once you have information, that it does sort of shift the pendulum a little bit, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And you've touched on something here. The information is power. Before it was, I have all the information, I have all the power. So now I can actually, lead from a positional perspective. But now it comes down to trust. You have the information, I have the information. Can I trust you to get me there? Are you the right person to, for lack of better terms, captain this ship to where it needs to go? And that's a shift, my friend.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what woke you up to this in terms of this to the work that you do? Was it a sort of defining moment or a series of situations that kind of brought you to where you are now?
Yes. What really got me going here is I was in as an executive coach, I sat in a lot of meetings and saw a lot of poor communicators, a lot of people that, had really great messages, but just did not know how to get them across. And I saw this happening over and over and over again, and made me realize that, this is a problem that I need to work towards solving. And and at the center of all of this really is complexity versus simplicity. Um, the biggest pitfall in the way we communicate is how simple can we make it so that people can understand it? Because once they understand it, then they can take it and apply it. But sometimes we focus so much on the complexity of things. I was once sitting in a board meeting, and I asked the CFO to explain to me, what how the next quarter was looking like, and he basically gave me a very complex answer. When I turned to the CEO, she basically explained it to me in 3 sentences, and everybody got it. So, it goes down to, good leaders break it down so that people can understand it and actualize it.
It's funny how the most powerful messages, to your point, is the simplest ones, right? And I think people get so caught up in their heads, and it's really you got to think about how do I break my message down to a point where others understand it, right? And that's something I have to they literally have to remember to know how to do.
Absolutely, Audley, because if it's too complex, you're not leading. You're just taking a walk and nobody's following you.
I like that. That's good. I like that. Like, and you're walking by yourself, right? A lonely road.
Absolutely. Most of the time when leaders on a lonely road, there's a reason. And for me, um, time and time again, I've found out that the reason is that nobody gets where they're trying to go, what they're trying to say. So they walk on this path and they look behind and it's just them by themselves. And
It's a
wonder
lonely
why.
road.
Yeah.
It's funny as you say that. I just got this image of this guy walking by himself, looking around for everyone, right? But
Yeah. So you ever had the term it's lonely at the top?
yes,
Yeah, it's lonely at the
Why?
top for a reason.
That's it. That's it. Now you're based in Hawaii, right? Is that where you've always done your work, or what got you, or what landed you there?
Yes, I am. I'm based in Hawaii. I've been based in Hawaii for several years, and however, my work takes me all over the world. So
Yeah.
I live in Hawaii, but it's safe to say I don't work in Hawaii.
Okay.
I go everywhere. As a matter of fact, I just got back yesterday from Australia. So
Wow.
so love the Aloha land, but I'm everywhere.
Nice. Nice. Um, was there sort of a defining moment in your career that brought you to this work, or what did that look like for you?
Yes. And in the interest of simplicity, I will go back to this, which is my corporate career started off as a management consultant,
Okay.
and as I went through this, I realized that management consultants and management was more about managing the systems and processes. However, we neglected the people, and the shift for me came when I realized if you lead the people well,
Yes.
they will take care of the systems and the processes. Earlier on, you talked about empowering people, and I want to add another. I want to add another E word to that, and that's equipping.
Ah,
Equip.
it's a good one.
Can we equip people so that they can lead others? Because the reality of it and the truth about this, oddly, is that everybody deserves to be led well. And that's what led me to doing this.
So leadership is what one of my, I always oftentimes joke. Um, I've got three topics absolute of audacity,
Hmm.
leadership, and curiosity. Those are my
Yeah.
three favorite topics to talk about. And I actually used to have a leadership podcast way back when, and one of the sort of core tenets of that was really, it was leadership development, but it was really built on the principle that everyone was a leader. And I used to, and I'm a basketball guy, so I used to use a sports analogy as go, like it said, you don't have to be a point guard to be the leader, because the point guard is often seen on the floor, the leader of the floor general that's organizing, getting people in play and in position. But you can lead from other areas of the floor and not be in that position. And I think a big part of that is just simple awareness of what you bring to the table, who you are, and how you can impact others. I'd certainly love to get your take on that concept of anyone can be a leader, because I think for many people they hold themselves back because they don't think they have the permission to step up and take action. And leadership is real about action, isn't it?
Absolutely, Audley. And you just brought up a really good point, a point that I'm really passionate about. Because many people ask me when I travel, are leaders born? And to me, the answer is absolutely, leaders are born. I've never met an unborn leader, and I really don't particularly want to. We're all born. Now, the thing is, some people are born gifted naturally where they can influence and they can lead, and others are not. However, leadership is a learned skill. And the more you learn the skill, the better you become at it.
Mm,
Uh, there's the natural born leader can only lead so far, and then they need to equip themselves with the necessary skills to be able to have them, really be a leader of significance. So
right.
so the only way you get permission to lead people is by adding value to them.
Okay.
You don't have to be in a leadership position or a role to be a leader. You
Right.
can be a leader from anywhere. As long as you're adding value to people, as long as you're growing people, you are a leader. And now, granted, I work with senior executives and senior military officers. However, I also help others become better leaders. And I always say, people reach out to me, be like, I'm not a director, I'm not a manager, I'm just, I'm just a store clerk. I want to be a leader. And I always tell them, you're already a leader because your mindset is what allows you to be a leader. So go out there, add value to people, grow others, bring others up. That's what leaders do. And to your point, it's not about how visible you are as a leader. It's the significance that you're making in in other people's lives to bring them along. That's what leadership is all about.
So let's kind of stay on this train here a little bit. Um, this train of thought regarding anyone can be a leader. So that individual who is, you know, sitting there questioning their ability, how do you wake them up to understand their leadership potential side of them?
It's pretty simple. You in your life have influence over somebody. It could be your son, could be your daughter, could be your nephews, could be your cousins, could be anybody. You are in a position of example, if I will. So go out there and begin to make a good example. Begin to add value to those people that are at an arm's length. That's how it starts. So we're all leaders. We're all in leadership positions. It's just some people just don't realize it.
Right, right. So, and it is about record. See, the way oftentimes I'll frame it in a manner that, um, leadership is very much about impact, right? And the impact that you can have, on other people. And if you're able to influence them in a correct way, that's not, that's respectful and, communication, as you said, how important that is. You're using respectful communication. You're listening, not just talking. I think that is one of the ways that people will, if you feel like you're being heard, then people will feel like they're being understood, they're being seen, and therefore, they're apt or open to being led. But when it's not there, you make it that much more difficult. Is how is what I would say.
Absolutely, absolutely, my friend. And you talked about you don't need to be the point guard to be the leader. The point guard is very visible. When I walk into meetings and boardrooms and different uh, you know places that I go,
Hmm.
it takes me about 2 to 3 minutes to identify who the real leader is. And a
Really.
lot of times it's not the CEO of the company. A lot of times it's not the head person there. A lot of times it's somebody who's amongst the team who is the true leader there. And it comes down to who do the people trust and who will they listen to.
So do you kind of go into those scenarios looking for that person? How's that look like for you?
It just pops up, it just pops up. I don't necessarily go looking, but it's just something that is I've just become in tune to where I'll sit in a room and you know in a few minutes I'll tell you who has the influence in this room. And it's not because they're talking the most, it's not because they're the loudest. um, it's people tend to lean towards who they are and what they are about. And this comes down to trust. It's not about education, it's not about status, it's about trust. And if I can coin this phrase, trust leadership, if I trust you, I will go with you because I know you're leading me
Right.
the right way and you're leading me well. Because I've never met anybody who says, I want to be led badly. I want to be led the wrong path. I want to be,
No.
I've never met that. And if I do, I'll write a book about it.
Well, will be fascinating. But I mean, we're joking about this, but I think we're being facetious. But there's truth about this. There's truth to this. What we're saying, right? Like, no one is going in with this expectation of, like, yeah, I'm gonna be led the wrong way, and I'm gonna be good with it, right? Like, no one wants that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does I'd love to get your take on what audacious living means to you.
Well, to me, it means, being bold and being brave. And leadership is really, it's not about being loved or being liked. It's about leading. So you have to ask yourself, do I want to be loved or do I want to lead?
Right.
And and so audacious leadership to me means, you're bold and you're brave, and you go out there and you take chances, and you're constantly looking at growing, because part of growing means taking risks.
Right.
And and so that word is so packed, and we can unpack it with so much. But to me, it's being bold and being brave, and saying we need to disrupt status quo in order to lead well.
So I have a um, an analogy that we use here called it's the bold framework, right? And
Uh,
it's bold is an acronym, four letter. Actually, it's probably on my shoulder here, I think. It's an acronym, four letter word. So the B in that framework. It stands for better than yesterday, right? So it's built on the concept of continuous improvement. You know, you climbed that mountain yesterday, man, and that was fantastic. And
yeah,
I really, really hope you celebrated it. And I hope that you felt proud and that was a fantastic moment because and it was wonderful for you. I'm delighted. But what are you doing tomorrow? Right? Like so it's on that base of continuing improvement. What are you doing tomorrow? And there's a bigger one over there. Have you seen that one? Why don't you tackle that? So you're constantly challenging yourself and being better than you were yesterday. The O stands for outlast adversity, and that's full recognition that there's some crappy things going to happen to us in our lives. Life is tough; it's not easy, and we've got to recognize that our ability to outlast that to get on the other side of that adversity. And I talked to you about where our greatness is. That's where our greatness is because we walk away with lessons. We've learned things about ourselves. We're fully intact, and we've outlasted the bad stuff. The L in that framework is live your truth, and that really speaks to authenticity. And we sort of alluded to that generally with the importance of leaders being real and who they are. Because no one's going to follow someone that's not that they don't trust, right? And if you don't trust someone to be themselves, then why am I following? And so that lonely road we laughed about, that leaders walking that lonely path by themselves. And then lastly, the D in that framework stands for disrupt the norm. And that's kind of just going off the beaten path. Yep. Doing things, being that disruptor, if you will. I oftentimes use the analogy of the Wright brothers, right? Imagine the crowd around them as they were trying to figure out how to fly. People probably laughing at them, thought they were crazy. What are you doing? Flying is for the birds. What do you think you're going to accomplish? Just imagine, right? And now, flying is part of our everyday existence. You fly a lot. You just came back Australia. You know how important flying is to us. And
yeah,
so it's recognizing that these aspects and elements are important to who we can be in our potential. And I think what's really nice about that framework is that you can come in at any point, meeting you where you're at. So maybe you already are continuously improving, but you need some help on trying to find your authentic voice or authentic self. And so you can come in wherever you're at. There's no designate. It's got to be this or it's got to be that.
right.
And so I think the aspects of what we've talked about very much ties in with the framework because of the fact that we've got to continually improve. Bad stuff is going to happen to us. Living authentically is important to us, and sometimes you got to be a disruptor, right, to make things happen. And so, I thought I'd share because we sound like we're talking about it, and I think it fit nicely into what we're doing here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wow.
Um, how do leaders stay grounded kind of when there's expectations and there's pressures that are around them, or maybe even when the doubt, because sometimes doubt is a big part of this too, right? Doubt can come in and it can impact, leaders aren't immune to doubt, right? They
Right.
certainly are. What are some of the ways that leaders just kind of stay grounded to who they are in those situations?
Some of the advice I give leaders, and this is something that, this is a question I get a lot. And for me is, before you start leading, you have to have a framework.
Okay.
How are you going to be leading?
Like a bold framework, maybe?
You could call it bold, you could call it audacious, however you want the
Yeah.
framework.
Okay. All right.
However, for different, I imagine a leader is leading at, multiple aspects. There's different things you're leading at any given time. And and I impress upon leaders to have a framework. And your framework is really your true north. And so, whenever you're in doubt, whenever there's adversity, whenever there is uh, something that begins to shake um, you off this journey, this path that you're on, go
Hmm.
back to the framework and ask yourself: Are we still doing the right thing? Do we need to adjust ourselves?
Right.
Because that's what grounds you is your framework. That's your true north. That's your compass.
Yeah.
And if you have no framework, you're going to get swayed left, right, and center. And I see this, sometimes where there's leaders leading without a framework. And, this comes and they sway to the north, and this comes, they sway to the east, and this comes, they sway to the west. It's because of a lack of a framework. And building the framework is an intentional thing that's collaborative with the people that you're leading to make sure we're heading in the right direction.
How important is it to be able to communicate that framework?
Oh, it's the most important thing that you will need to do to those you are leading. Because at the end of the day, it's those you're leading need to understand the framework. Everybody else, you're going to have people who don't understand the framework who come in and they're like, "Oh, you're leading wrong, or you're not leading well, or this is wrong with that." And as long as your framework is solid and is grounded and is understood by those you're leading, that's what matters. And everything else becomes noise to a certain degree. But
Right.
the framework also cannot just be what you created without any buy-in, because if you don't have buy-in to that framework, you're back to that leader who's positional and leading and taking a walk with nobody following them.
So a big part of that buy-in, I would say, is trust, right? You've got to. I think we sort of alluded to that earlier as well too. How important trust is, but you're not having you're not giving yourself the opportunity to do the things you do as a leader without trust. I wonder if you sort of talk about how you ensure that leaders are remembering or incorporating trust into their daily actions.
Yes. Number one is you really have to stay humble. Humility allows you uh, to understand that you're blessed with a gift of leadership, and you have to stay grounded at all times. And nobody's better than anybody else. You're
No.
just in a situation where you're leading others. In fact, it's 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 a blessing. It's an opportunity. It's an honor to do that. That keeps you grounded and humble. The second thing is you have to stay teachable,
Huh.
because if you're not teachable, um, the thing about this leadership journey is that we are constantly learning on the journey. The the focus is not on the destination. The focus is on the journey. The lessons are learned in this journey. And as you're out there, you're going to have to adjust your sails. You're going to have to change the course a little bit, because things are going to come that force you to relook at the framework and adjust it here and there. Now, if you're not teachable, that's
Mm,
not going to happen. So you're going to stay on that path. The winds are going to blow you in another direction, and you just keep going because no, I got to stick with the framework. This is the framework. This is where we're going. And at the end of the day, when everything is said and done, you will never get to your destination, or you're going to get there and you're going to get there alone.
right.
So
Right.
those are the things that I would say leaders really need to make sure they're keeping an eye on every single day and reflecting on those to make sure you're not veering off the course, if I will.
A big part of humility and being teachability or teachable is humility, right? Like you almost have to surrender to the situation or to what's in front of you to be open. Because if you don't have the humility and you're going in with the way you've got the answers and you know it all, then it's just you might as well just blow it up because you're not going to get the results that you want.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so we talk about leaders sort of building trust, which I think is huge, right? In terms of all this, obviously the humility. Um, in your journeys, what stands out to you as sort of the sort of common sort of pitfalls or traps that you see leaders fall into, or overlook, if you will, the significance of?
Uh, I would say growth, and it goes back to teachability as well.
Yeah.
It's easy to stay in a space of not growing,
Hmm.
and growing is an intentional thing. Are you growing every day? I always ask leaders when I meet them, what did you learn today? How did you grow today?
Right.
If you're not growing, you're dying. And and so that for me is the biggest pitfall for leaders is many don't look at growth as an
Yep.
important aspect of leading. And I use the analogy: if you're green, you're growing; if you're ripe, you're rotting. So how are you staying green every single day? Because when you're green, your team is green. Those you're leading are green. And you have a responsibility and a position of trust to keep yourself green so that you can keep them green.
And not right.
Yeah.
What,
That's true.
what are some of the ways that leaders, excuse me, can manage or handle setbacks, but not lose momentum at the same time, right? Like we know that, on your journey, there's gonna be things that happen, but that situation is not gonna, first of all, it's not gonna last forever, and nor should it define your journey. But for some people, it does, right? Like, so I love it when people share their story. And you hear all kinds of stories where people go through hardships and challenges and setbacks. And for some people, the story stops at when the bad stuff, right? The bad stuff, that's when the story. And for me, I'm like, no, no, I get my popcorn and no, tell me more. Well, how did you get out of it? And what did what did you learn from it? What resources, like all the lessons that come out of that. And so, these bad stuff don't define the journey, but for some people it does. And so how do we get individuals to recognize that, hey, yes, this is a hardship, this is a difficulty, but we can get through this?
Yes, and leaders have to have a certain level of resilience because uh, you have not been, you're not the leader during for what I would call the ice cream moments.
Okay.
You're there for the turbulent times. That's really why leaders are there. Because if everything was milk and honey, so to speak, then we would not need any leaders. And
Yeah.
so when the turbulent times come, number one, I'm hoping that you're not blindsided by them. Because as a leader, what normally knocks you off is what blindsides you.
Got you.
So leaders have to be thinking ahead. What are some of the pitfalls that are out there? Because you remember, leading means going ahead of others. So
Mm,
you want to make sure that you're always uh, uh, miles ahead of the people you're leading so you can see what's coming and you can be able to lead them through that. But if it hits you at the same time it's hitting the people that you're leading, then you're all in the same boat. So that's a fast one is always go ahead and manage your lead through the pitfalls. Um,
got you.
Number two, if you're blindsided, you have to go back to your framework. You have to look at what is your why? Why are we doing this? And what are we learning from this? Why did this happen? The why is solves a lot of problems. How do
Mm,
we get through this? What resources do we need to be able to lead through this setback and and at the same time learn through this so that it doesn't happen again? Now,
yeah.
I always tell leaders there's always a way out.
Mm,
When I hear the word there is no way out, that's the surrender mentality. There's
got you.
always a way out. We just have to make sure we're thinking through it. So, so that's a combination of all those allows a leader to really get through these turbulent times, and hopefully you are identifying them before they actually, you know, show up.
Right. Right. That thinking ahead, right? Planning.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So what advice would you give to a leader or a potential leader, or maybe someone thinking about going into a leadership role or position, and they're afraid to make that first step, that first bold, audacious step? What advice would you give them?
I'd say be bold, communicate clearly, be strategic, develop your framework, and get a buy-in for your framework, and lead well.
Lead well. The process of leading well, it's one of those things where you because you learn as you go, right? It's an ongoing evolution process. You don't like suddenly get into leadership role and go, okay, I've arrived, I'm great, everything's wonderful. There's still that. I think that's where the work really begins, right?
Yes, how are we growing? We've talked about growth. We've talked about uh we're better tomorrow than we are today.
Yes.
So, but that comes from reflecting. How are you reflecting today? You know, if you're doing the same thing over and over again and not learning from it, then you're really not leading. And that's what it comes down to. Your daily agenda is important, but reflecting on it so you can get better tomorrow is equally, if not more important.
I oftentimes say that you haven't truly made a mistake until you go through the experience and you haven't learned the lesson. That's
Yes,
that's the mistake, right? But
absolutely.
um, I think that's relevant to leaders today more than ever before, right? Like be very mindful of the lessons the situations teach you, and move forth in that direction, man.
Right, and talking about mistakes, I always look at them as not really mistakes, but growing and learning opportunities.
Hmm.
It has to be able to make mistakes, correct the mistakes, learn from the mistakes,
Yep.
lead others through that mistake. Because when you make a mistake as a leader, others are a part and puzzle of that mistake, those that you're leading. So
Gotcha.
those things are important. You got to make the mistakes, which you will make, correct them, learn from them, grow through them, and lead others out of them.
Very, very cool. Amos, this has been a delightful chat. And before you go, one last thing I want to ask you, and I'd love, and it's something I'm always curious from guests. If you can, for me, define what audacious living means to you.
Audacious living means to me, go out there, don't leave anything in the field. You only have one life, and there is no second chance. Every day counts. Be the best that you can be, and when you wake up tomorrow, look at what you did yesterday and be better. But go out there, lead well, because that's why you're here, is to be a good example to others
I
and
like
live
that.
live a positive mark. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of leading well. It resonates very nicely for me. Hey, Moses, this has been great. For listeners that want to connect with you directly, learn more about your work, where can we send them?
Send them to my website, www.amosbalongo.com. I also have a podcast called Journeys of Inspiration, where we focus more on the journey versus the destination.
Yeah,
To me,
yeah.
the journey is more important than the destination. So this podcast really allows people to, take these simplified nuggets and apply them on this journey we call life.
I love it. I love it. Well, we will make sure that the appropriate contact details are in the show notes below. Amos, this has been, again, delightful time. I'm really glad that we had this time to chat. And I think the work that you're doing is very noble and very worthwhile and very important, particularly in this day and age for our leaders. So thank you for that. And thanks for being a guest on the Audacious Living Podcast.
Thank you, Audley. Very much appreciate it.
All right, welcome back. If you're someone who's trying to grow in your leadership, whether at work or in your business or family or even in your community, today's conversation is a powerful reminder that leadership starts long before you even get the title. It starts with how you communicate, how you serve, and whether people can trust you enough to follow your lead. What really stayed with me was Amos talking about humility and teachability. That part hit me because it's really easy to think leadership is about having all the answers. But in reality, some of the strongest leaders are the ones who stay open, stay grounded, and keep learning as they go. I also loved his point that if you're walking and nobody's following, that's a lonely road. And that image really, really said it all. Real leadership begins when trust becomes stronger than title. It's time for an audacious insight, a quick look at something happening in the real world that reflects the very ideas we've been exploring today. And when Indra Nooyi former CEO of PepsiCo, wrote personal letters to the parents of her senior executives, thanking them for raising such remarkable leaders. She showed that leadership is not just about performance. It's about seeing people as human beings and leading with humility. That simple act built trust, deepened loyalty, and reminded people that they matter beyond their job titles. And that's exactly what today's conversation with Amos reminds us. People are far more willing to follow leaders who lead them with humility, care, and genuine respect. Make sure you connect with Amos Balango directly. He's doing some incredible work around leadership and communication, and you can learn more at amosbalango.com. That's his website. He also hosts the Journeys of Inspiration podcast. Got to give him a shout out to my fellow podcaster. And that's where he focuses on the journey and the lessons we learn along the way. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you're following the podcast, leaving a review, because this helps even more people discover these incredible conversations. Until next time, keep living life audaciously.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion. My words got power, my thoughts have action. Motivation, stay gracious.